So I will call to order this Orange Township Zoning Commission meeting on Tuesday, March 12th. Can you please take roll?
I am. All right. Dennis McNulty. Here. Christine Chevelis.
Here.
And Les Pierce.
Here.
All right, we're here to discuss the new Orange Township draft zoning resolution. So I guess, Robin, if you want to take over, we'll comment.
All right, I will take it away. All right. And Robin, just for this is a continuation of previous.
Which I did not attend last week, or last time, I apologize.
Not a problem. All right, so we will start, so last time we covered uses, which was the bulk of Article 3, so now we're on to Article 4, which is the generally applicable subsections. So there are many exceptions to this that are laid out in the text, but in a general sense, what we're talking about in Article 4 will apply across zoning districts. So you're going to see these be applied to most properties in the township. So 4.01 and 4 is, I don't think we really need to get into it. So we're on I'm starting on page 186 of the draft text if you have that in front of you. 4.02 talks about accessory uses and structures. Again, I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Nothing is really changing there. 4.03 talks about lighting, and that is largely staying the same. There's no significant changes. We are, I'd say, fairly strict in terms of lighting here, but I think in general that's a good thing. So when we talk about commercial lighting, we look at foot candle levels, how bright it is on a certain area of the property. We have down lighting required, and then a height requirement of 20 feet as well, and that's all staying the same.
Do we have a temperature, or what is it called, Kelvin rating?
Yes, so that is the one thing that is new. So the maximum Kelvin would be 3,500.
Okay, I was trying to find that. Oh, I see it, thank you.
But that is certainly open to feedback on that.
No, I know that's something we have discussed in the past, that a lot of people prefer the warm as to the blue, because the blue creates glare and strobe, so some people have difficulty with the blue lights.
Yeah.
The warmer colors are preferable.
Yeah, agreed.
Just for accessibility, universal design.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful that will apply and take into effect. The one thing I would say about that requirement is that it will be difficult for us to enforce.
Yes, some people can tell the difference. I can tell the blue from the warm colors, but not everybody is as perceptive, perhaps.
But
I guess if it's difficult to enforce, what's our...
Well, so my thinking on it is, we have it in there as a guidepost so that people coming in and designing new things will have that in mind.
So we'd say it's preferred. Are we saying it's preferred or saying it's required?
It says shall, so shall have a maximum temperature of 3,500 Kelvin. But we don't have an instrument that
can measure.
Yeah, right.
Here's the issue. I've been in zoning for almost 20 years. It's never come up. Never. As in never. If it's written in the code, it's all pretty much dealt with. The only thing we've had to deal with from here is never temperature. We got concerned about LED lights when they first showed up, and that was overly concerned, and we didn't need to be. It was not a big deal. The only thing we do get concerned about is which direction the light's pointing. Are they pointing down? And where are they, and how much light is this? What's close? Is this a neighborhood that's close by? So we get concerned with the light with respect to those things.
Yeah, the only other way it might get concerned is some of the old lights were noisy, the sodium halide or whatever, some of the industrial lights that they don't use anymore. They don't use them anymore because LEDs are more cost effective.
Exactly.
But I do prefer just for visibility purposes, the warmer colors.
But it's written in there, you know, I think we're done. I think that's it.
Yeah, but I guess my only problem is two years again. It was not enforceable, and it's not an issue for the most part. Most people can't distinguish. You have a distinguishing eye. Most people can't distinguish. I don't know. Is that maybe it's the standard anyhow? Maybe everybody does.
I actually
Kelvin
think
anyhow.
perhaps people can distinguish it if you do them together, because like I say, the really cold blue colors give you a strobe effect or give you glare.
Right, and I think, my opinion on it, I think if I went out and I saw the difference, I would probably be able to tell, but then, again, in terms of enforcement, how would I put that into a zoning letter, a violation letter, that I made this judgment and have no evidence for it? So that is the issue.
So what happens if somebody, has the glare and the strobe issue and there's an accident?
Yeah, I think.
Here's what I suspect. Here's what I suspect. That no one here knows. Here's what you'll be the closest, but no one here knows. Right. What I suspect is those are what is already being done. That's not an issue. Is the standard.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
Exactly. We don't know the answer to that, but as you've seen it for the last 20 years, I suspect that's the standard. And we could go look it up and you could find out for yourself, but me personally, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, well, she brings up a good point here. If it's supposed to be enforced and somebody has the strobe blue story or whatever it may be, and you could not enforce it, what happened?
Are we liable? Are they
That's
liable?
the question.
I don't believe so. I've never seen zoning laws used as justification for liability. That
It's
is not.
always the lawyer out there willing to.
It's
Yeah. So but again, so my rec on it would be to leave it in, just again as a guidepost, for no other reason.
Okay.
okay. We'll go with segregation.
Certainly not a hill that I'm willing to die on, but. So that was 190. So that was lighting. Again, everything else is pretty much staying the same with lighting. The foot candle levels are the same. The height is the same. So next we'll move on to 4.05, and this is where I am very excited that we have an architect in the room.
Back to lighting just for
Yeah.
a minute. Did the new company help write this?
So that the lighting section was almost entirely transferred over from our current code because
And here's the reason I asked that question. I'm interested in new thinking and standards, just like what we talked about that we didn't know. I'm interested in what those, especially for commercial lighting, what those standards have become for lumens, for height, for distance apart, to make sure that, hey, what we're right where we should be. Here's what the standards are for people who are offering this construction, because our code is old.
Yeah.
And it was written before anybody even knew what those standards were. We bumped into them a few times. People said, "Oh, we want higher posts, or we want more of them."
Okay, so.
And so that's what I'm curious is I feel better about it. That because that's why we hired the company, right?
Yep.
To bring in those things that we can't possibly know. Here's what's going on. Here's what the world's doing.
Sort of my take. If I'm an architect on a project, I usually have a civil engineer, I have an electrical engineer. They know per zoning code what the foot candles are supposed to be in the parking lot for life safety. They know what the foot candles are supposed to be at the property line for light spillage over into the neighboring area. They then would choose a couple standard light fixtures, and there's a couple standard heights. And the amount of foot candles that you need at a particular location, either if it's like a exit door, it would be greater than at the property line. That is dictated by code. So either you have building code or you have zoning code, and then they figure it out with a photometric program about which light fixtures they need, which lenses or bulbs they need based on the height of the light fixture. So it's all sort of, I can get by with fewer light fixtures if I put them higher up and maybe use a different lens. Or, since we have a guideline of they have to be 20 feet, then they might have to have more light fixtures or a more expensive lens in said light fixture to get the spread or coverage they need. Does that make any
Oh,
sense?
no, I know that, and that's
Okay.
the argument we've been through forever.
Exactly.
I've heard this. I've heard all that. I've heard all that laid out just the way you have. And then I've heard those people that say, oh, we want to do this and we want those posts to be higher. Yes, and they'll say, we've been through all those photometrics. Now we get that. We've seen it because they come in with that data.
And
we know.
my response is, you just want to do that because you want to reduce the cost.
You know, so
Is there,
well, what I was interested in is that our code was written to those same kind of standards so that we bump into problems less often.
yeah.
You know, that it's written to be the general use so that we don't even come up with it. We aren't getting creative with it.
Or even a range standard. If there's, if you're using whatever the height is this and you need more coverage, then you can go maybe even smaller space or whatever. Even if there's a range standard that could be also applied, I think it gives folks a little flexibility with their project, at the same time holding to a standard that says, well, this is what the standard is, and we'd like to see you within that standard or within that range.
Yeah, and so we do have minimum and maximum.
Yeah, yeah.
foot
Right,
candle.
exactly.
and the company didn't change.
And I'm certainly fine.
Hey, these folks
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So our thinking was, we think that our lighting standards have been good up until this point. Let's leave them as is. I don't recall any pushback from Zone Code, but I can certainly just
Yeah.
pose the question, how does this compare to best
standards.
practice?
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just trying to keep us out of people getting creative.
Yep.
I mean, the closer the code is to real general standards, in my opinion, the better it is.
At least what they are today.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's comparable to other jurisdictions, but that's something zone code can,
Yeah, we can look into it.
That's my only point.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
I mean, any project has got to go through this to get zoning approval.
Yeah.
They have the knowledge, we do not.
All right.
All right.
We're ready
Move on,
to
sorry.
move on?
Anything else with lighting?
We spend a lot of time on lighting. That and water.
And then signage.
All right, so I would like to talk about in section 4.05, the street-facing facade design standards, and then the predominant material standards. So we're talking about architecture primarily of commercial buildings and how they are applied. So Eric, you can go to the 2 pages down and go to the figure 4.05A. So this is the figure that we're going to be looking at.
Okay.
So the text for this is any mixed-use commercial or other non-residential development within the applicable districts and zones shall incorporate at least 3 of the design features provided in this figure into their street-facing facades.
So they have to have at least 3 of these.
Correct. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 10 possible options. They have to include at least 3, and they can pick and choose which 3. My question is, 1, are these unreasonable asks of a developer? Would they drive project costs too high? And are these architectural features appropriate for Orange Township.
So
Well,
I'm pausing to let other people.
what was this? This was commercial building?
I like it.
Yes, and so this would not be all sides of commercial buildings, but it would be for any side of a commercial building that fronts a public street.
So not an alley, not an
3.
I like it. Some things can be expensive.
So this is a
More
way
expensive.
which is basically, we just don't want a blank box.
Right.
The revolving door could be a.
Who shows these terminology? Is this zone code?
Yes, these were all done by Zoneco. I have full discretion. I have zero architectural knowledge.
Next time.
Great.
Some of these are used interchangeably or
Okay,
incorrectly.
that is good to know.
Coins are generally correct. The corner treatment, they are usually stone or brick because they appear in masonry. The only time they would appear in wood or metal blocks is if it is pretending to be masonry. All right, they actually have a structural purpose in the olden days to fortify the corner of a masonry building. So now they're decorative, but there is a purpose, or was originally a purpose behind them, historically speaking. A belt course is usually a row that defines perhaps where a floor level is. You could also provide, if you want, I would say a water table. So if you look at the bottom where you would appear to have those, could be storefront windows, below that is sometimes you will see a water table. Sometimes it's of a different material, like you might have stone and then brick above it, or a different type of stone below it, or a different treatment to the stone, smooth as opposed to rough or articulated. And that is generally the water table would signify sort of your foundation, and you might have a raised foundation. So like
Just-
go on.
Just real quick, this is the facade though, right? So it's not,
You would have it on a facade or on a major, yes.
right, so is it expected to be true? I guess is what I'm trying to, like the one you talked about, the belt course? So the belt course normally represents a floor and that sort of thing,
Would have historically, yes.
historically.
It is still used today to try to define a building.
Yeah, so given that it's a facade, to give it the appearance of looking okay, the definition may not be the architectural expectation of it may not be fully true. Is that a?
Well, I would say is that the basis, because this is all based sort of on classical architecture, so it was based on construction methods. Now, we don't use load-bearing stone or brick walls anymore. They are all veneer.
Yes.
So, but the terms still apply, but not perhaps the structural purpose behind them.
Right.
What bothers me sometimes as an architect is that people will take one of these elements and apply it inappropriately because they do not understand the reason for it and why it was established. Every building usually should have a base, a midsection, and a top. That's how we define it. Even if little kids, when they draw a house, they usually draw a base, a midsection, and a top. They draw doors and windows and maybe a chimney.
But if it's a facade, I'm doing just that, drawing a fake picture. Right, that says here's the base, here's the mid, and here's the.
But you still have those elements
Yeah,
to organize the building.
yeah. So I guess my question is, given that we're drawing on this piece of paper, so to speak, and I'm selecting 3 of these, do we care? I understand because you're the architect and this is This is meaningful and it has true meaning for what is a true expectation. But if you're advising a client who is just putting together their facade and they say, hey, I want to put this belt course because whatever that means, I like it. I want to do this canopy or this coin thing, and maybe I want to figure out some green roof. From a facade, is that something you say, oh, okay, yeah, we could throw some things together here. The veneer and the fake stuff, we can throw it together.
Yeah.
So it's your,
Sounds ideal, Robin.
I like
Yeah.
it. But
I might modify it.
Yeah.
Where did the green roof come from? 'Cause
I like that too. That's
obviously brand
really,
new.
really, really good.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it on top of a classical building, but I would put it on top of a modern one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the green roof is something that we included just to try to incentivize that if people, if just, maybe just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's brand new.
I like that.
And
Yeah.
you might have less stormwater, downsize your stormwater
I
retention.
think it's a good concept. Did the zone code come up with this?
Yes, this was entirely so.
I like the concept. I would probably modify what is shown on that piece of paper. I would remove some things and I would add some things.
Can you give me a list of what to remove and what to add?
When you say remove, do you mean just change in other words, like the belt course, because I think that was one of the ones you said, well, it's not quite what this definition is. Would you just call it something else?
Well, first of all, I don't know how many people have a rotary door anymore.
That
They
is.
generally not the most energy efficient. What most people have nowadays is a front door and a vestibule door. What you're looking at here is more like a historic recessed door where you would have like an entry with maybe tile that says like, you know, so-and-so's pharmacy, and then the doors would be there because you would have storefront windows and a recessed door, not necessarily a rotary door. Or so I might suggest not the rotary door, but a recessed door or, you know, maybe a vestibule and then the main door behind it.
The rotary door is my favorite. I like that rotary. I thought it'd be very expensive, but I thought, well, you know, maybe somebody would want to pick that.
They're
But-
expensive and they're drafty.
Okay.
So my understanding is they're not the best energy efficient thing.
So most people probably decline it anyway.
Well, and what we could do is, you know, have some kind of door option.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
maybe a door, like a storefront door,
Sure.
a door with side lights, a recessed door, things like that. I would probably add a water table, because a lot of buildings nowadays have water tables, or commercial buildings or ones like mixed-use buildings.
I think adding the rotary door, I get your point, probably not going to be used. We understand that. So the zone code. But what this does, this forces them into picking 3 other ones.
Yeah.
You know, so if you put a door that's used all the time, oh, just pick this.
Yeah.
You know, to my opinion, I think that's why that rotary door is there. It's big, and you know, we all understand.
For me, it's
not
more,
really-
I think, suggests that there's door options as opposed to like your standard, I'm walking into, I don't know, Best Buy, or I'm walking into Home Depot.
Yeah.
But we could make the door more attractive as an entry.
Agreed. And yeah, and I think the intention of the rotary door is, you know, not that we're entirely attached to classical architecture and, you know, architecture of that time period, but also, you know, having a pedestrian scale entry point.
Exactly.
And they have to pick at least 3.
Correct.
So they could pick 4 or 5 if they want.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you could do, you know, awnings or canopies, yes, pilasters, water tables. We could talk about a variety of windows. Here they have decorated windows, they have sills. I would actually probably include that as decorative window sills and heads. That's what you see below the window is the sill.
You should make up a list and send,
Yes, please do.
send.
That would be helpful.
I think
As far as the cornice, yes, I do think that a cornice could be a detail. Now, whether or not you do corbels or modillions are technically not corbels. Modillions are what you would see along decoration along a cornice. It's a type of decoration. It's the dentils that you see. You have no idea what I'm
I
talking
have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
No big.
But in some places, what we've done instead of doing the corbels is we'll do like wood panels, like where you might have had a historic sign, but something, there's a variety of decorations you could put on a cornice, not just the corbels or the medallions, but you could do panels, or you could do maybe more different types of trim or different types of brickwork, but you would have a decorative cornice. Like sort of like we're talking about a decorative doorway with options, I would say a decorative cornice with options. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cornice options.
All right, so basically I need to give you a list of options.
That would be
I was
great.
like, what's my deadline? Because I'm a little busy at work right now.
I'd say ideally within 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Any other environmentally friendly, anything that could go on the facade? I mean, the roof is really huge. I really like that, but anything else?
What you can do with your canopies is if you're concerned about heat gain, you can use canopies above your windows, or you can use fins. Canopies are usually used for the southern elevation, and then fins, which would almost be like blade signs, you can do for your west elevations in terms of environmentally friendly ways to lessen the sun glare that you might get from the setting sun.
Put those on the list.
Yeah.
So we can.
And I think, just thinking through this, if we are adding more things, then we may bump up that 3 number to 4 or 5 if there are more options.
Yeah.
If that makes
But
sense.
I like this. This is a good
Great.
suggestion, a good addition.
Anything else we want to talk about with these design elements?
And I think aren't older buildings now putting that green roof story? Don't you see that?
So
It just
the
kinda
issue with older
closer
buildings
to the
and
two.
green roofs is you have to look at structure.
Okay.
Because depending upon the type of green roof, depends upon whether or not your structure can bear it. If you're just using like a little sedum that's not that deep, your structure might be able to support it. But if you're talking about big planters, trees, you're talking about cubic feet of dirt and plants, that the original roof might not have been designed to hold. Just like it's really popular now also to put up like rooftop gardens and rooftop patios and things like that. You have to make sure, structurally speaking, that the building's designed for it, or you have to add structures to support it. I mean, so you could add, if you wanted to do like green roofs, rooftop gardens, rooftop patios, whatever. I think that's more of something that would not be a building enhancement feature, but more of a design wish on the part of the applicant. If that makes sense. But I can look at environmentally sensible. Taking notes.
Great. All right, so the next part of the architectural package that I want to discuss is on the next page, Eric. So we're talking about material requirements now instead of design elements. So we have a list for and this is again for street facing, this is not four-sided. But this is predominant materials, so 80% minimum required of total street-facing materials. The possible options would be brick, stone, glass, architectural metal, concrete cladding, terracotta, and stucco.
Okay, so this is actually my first question. What do you mean by concrete cladding? Do you mean like concrete panels?
I don't know.
Okay.
If that needs to be clarified, then we can look at that.
Okay, so what I would say is almost, and this is just me being the architect, obsessive compulsive whatever.
What you got?
Technically, you're talking brick veneer or stone veneer. You're not having load-bearing stone or brick,
Right,
what I'm
sure.
assuming. Concrete cladding, I'm assuming that it is concrete forms that you're applying to the side of the building, that it's not like CMU or poured concrete wall.
It's decorative.
Or it's a cladding that you can get it in like a panel, and the panel's attached to the side of the building.
I view all that stuff as kind of being more decorative rather than structural.
Yeah, none of this stuff is structural. But what I am getting at is like stucco versus ephes. So you can make ephes look like stucco, you can make ephes look like brick or stone.
Sure.
Generally, my recommendation is that if you do that, it's fine, maybe not on the first floor, where you will notice damage and things of that nature, and where you're more likely to know that it's not the real stucco or the real stone or the real brick. But you're not going to notice it on the second to whatever floor. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So I would say that, so generally, we do sometimes get pushback, depending, because certain plan districts require sometimes entirely natural materials, and sometimes it's specific about what those natural materials are, and sometimes not.
Yeah.
And so generally the question that I get is the ephes or is hardy plank siding acceptable for that 80%?
And that's actually what I'm getting at also, is fiber cement can look like wood. Fiber cement can look like
Sure.
a stucco
Yeah.
panel. Wood can look really nice if it's like natural cedar and, you're going for that look, or, as opposed to just a standard wood, T11 siding that we have out there.
Right. Yep.
So I think I'm not quite sure what Zoneco is going for here. If they want, I don't want to use the term enhanced materials, or what type of materials they're talking about, because architectural concrete masonry units can look like stone or brick. I can go out and I can buy a cast stone. It's not real stone. So I don't know if they're talking about real stone, like I'm going to the quarry and buying a piece of sandstone or granite or something, or I can go and get a piece of cast stone from Rock Cast, and it looks like real stone. It might even be dimensional, like, 8 inches thick. So that's sort of where I'm not sure, like you said, the hardy can look like wood, but it's really, a durable material, as opposed to like, even some composite siding is durable, some is not.
And I guess, sometimes, at least from the perspective of wood or whatever, it can be a nice presentation, that looks good.
Exactly.
And it's something that would give, the presentation that we would want to have.
Right.
So I don't know how you account for these are the preferred ones, and you do these, no questions. You do these, we want to look at it. We'll have deeper questions about it and what's the story and have you considered. But I don't know if that's.
So to me, yes, you would have those questions. Is anything missing from the list that is typically used that we need to add? I don't think so. Is there anything up there that should be removed? That's a whole basic thing to me, because you want to put this forth, here's what's in our zone. We want to give the options for everything that's common to be available. However you choose to use it, good for you. We don't care. We're going to care what it looks like once you get here, but we don't care from this, because this isn't about its design or its use. This is just giving them a choice that, everything's on the list.
But there's
Is there anything
limitations.
missing?
There's limitations on that, right? We're saying 80% and 20%. So you're saying
for details to that. It's like your house may be stucco, and then you have wood as a wood trim. That's kind of how I view that,
Okay.
20%.
So
That's what the basic
my-
is.
I guess like architectural concrete masonry units. They could be rock cuts. All right, they're concrete, but they're designed to look like stone, like sandstone or something like that. They could be spec brick, which is a concrete masonry unit that is designed to look like a brick. Comes in like brick coursing. Or it could just be plain old CMU that I pick up at the hardware store and that I've done to build my dumpster enclosure at, the Walmart, or it's on the backside of the Walmart. So there's a whole spectrum.
So how can we clarify that?
Exactly. So I think that needs to be broken down. I have no problem if you want to put a spec brick on a facade if it looks like brick.
Sure.
But I wouldn't want a unfinished concrete masonry unit on a facade.
So I'm genuinely asking, how do we clarify?
To me, I think you put the options up there. That whole stuff gets clarified when somebody walks in here with the presentation. I think any details you add to clarification for that just complicates the intention. Which is probably why zone code.
Well,
put
but
it there.
is there a way you could say, on a facade that's, I was going to say public facing, but I guess all of them are respectively public facing, but it's on
Technically, a
the,
facade is
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
front public facing.
but that's on, when you use the example, if it was on the back of like the Walmart or whatever, and I don't know, maybe it's on a main thoroughfare or whatever, we like to see you use this. And if it's not, pick your poison, or whatever. I don't know if that's based on car counts or whatever, the traffic counts or what it may be, or 2-lane highway versus a 3-lane versus a 4-lane highway or what. Maybe that's one way you can kind of divide it. But I agree also, at the end of the day, it's when they come here and we see it. But I guess the question becomes, to what degree of impact can we have on, hey, we see that, we don't like that.
Right.
That's your impact. And you have ultimate impact. Ultimate impact.
Well,
Because you say, hey, I'm not approving this. I don't like this. This isn't going to work.
Yeah, but it's not up to Les Pierce alone.
Can't write the code to an individual.
Yeah.
Or nor should we.
No, I agree. I agree with
Yeah,
that.
we need to sort of.
But we have to kind of figure out what's going to be our standard in certain cases.
It's basic. You put all the materials up there that are possible and.
So this is sort of the issue I have, and I'll just put it out there, is, for example, when we have people like, Walmart or BJ's or Myers or any of those large chains, they already have standards. That's been established by their corporate architect, whatever you want to call them. And usually they have like 3 levels of standards. They'll have a standard that, they might put out on, Cleveland Avenue or something like that in an inner city area, where people might not be, as affluent or socioeconomic.
The code can't address that.
Actually, the code can, because Dublin does it. Parts of City of Columbus do it.
How do you know that? How do you know that gets addressed in the code versus getting addressed at a zoning commission?
Because usually when that corporate architect or that group shows up at a zoning meeting, they have already picked out, based upon the standards in your zoning code, if they're going to give you the Cleveland Avenue or, the Westerville or the Dublin.
How would you
Or
designate that
Gahanna.
in the zoning code?
Well, Gahanna does, Dublin does.
But when you say they designated, what do you mean? How do they designate it?
Based upon the material people are allowed to use.
Yeah, and
So that's where we are. What is the material you're allowed to use?
Exactly.
yeah, and so
And
another
that's what
thing.
It wouldn't be bad to put those materials in if that's what you want. If you want the Dublin look versus the.
How would you write that in? You still haven't answered that question.
So
How would you write that in? That
Could you say-
we want your top level of that? We know you have 3 levels. We want your top level. That's here. I can't see how that can be written in a code, and I can't see why would want to. I can't see how you could write it in.
Well, like I said, I know places like New Albany and Dublin do have it written in, especially New Albany. But
Can you call over and
because-
see what their write-in looks like so we can?
or Zonco can research it.
Yeah,
However, I noticed, and say this too, it also makes it very difficult to design buildings in some of those areas. So it might also detract from people that we're trying to bring in. There's a catch-22 there. I don't know, Robin, if you're going to say the same thing or not.
Yeah, so two things to say. So one, yeah, I agree, and kind of our goal with this is to balance how do we have good aesthetics without driving up the costs for builders so much that only the richest can afford to build. You know, we want to be champions of small business.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And so Dennis, I do understand what you're saying, but I think that the system that we're looking at going to with straight districts is a little bit different than where we've been in the past, where your ability to pick and choose certain elements of developments is going to diminish a little bit. So you kind of have to look at things as the whole package. And so that's why we want to get these standards in place now, so that it's just clear at the outset, you have to comply with these without being overly prescriptive.
Orange Township and you see stuff all over. You know, because we did not establish ourselves as New Albany or Dublin.
Well, I think Dublin, and this is just my opinion, what you see in Dublin is a reaction to what you see
Sure.
like south of 270 and what happened with that development that they were reacting to when they established their zoning.
And
Dublin.
they've made some horrible mistakes though. Horrible that we haven't made. Number one is that shopping center that's next to the hospital, all the signs are the same color. So you have to drive in there and read the signs because the company's logo doesn't tell you who they are. Because they didn't let the company use their logo.
Yes.
Now, some of the Dublin architecture, I'm not sitting there at a high level and go, oh, these guys are awesome. No, I don't sit there.
Their signage is
I
problematic. I agree.
sit there and see
What on the right-hand side, what are the things we absolutely couldn't live with? I mean, glass block, vinyl, fiber cement board, is that?
That's hardy.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's
And that's,
hardy.
yeah, it's very common.
So glass block,
Smart side, which is what they're doing at Evans Farm. That's common. Vinyl, unfortunately, is pretty common, but it's not that durable unless you get the premium vinyl, which is more expensive.
Should we remove vinyl?
yeah, so what's the three we could say, okay, I mean, in other words, should we move wood to the premium side? That's one of my questions. I think wood could be great, move it to the premium side. This architectural concrete masonry unit.
It can be, or it could be just like your Home Depot CMP.
Right, and so that's, you know, I want to figure out, okay, with both, because I think architectural metal and concrete cladding, that is pretty generic. Can we tighten that up, or should we
Say if you
that's the same?
choose this, it must be whatever. Or is there a certain grade? Is there like, architecture, concrete, masonry, grade 4?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as that? That say it has to be a certain grade level?
I know that is true for vinyl and composite siding. For architectural metal, I'm not sure what they're getting with. Are they getting at metal panels? I mean, architectural metal could be like, metal roof.
Right.
It could be an attractive metal roof with sanding steam.
Right.
Or it could just be corrugated metal, like
Right.
I have a backyard shed.
Right.
So I think I would say that we need to have another stab at defining what zone code means by these. And then we can maybe also, perhaps we could give zone code some like architectural metal. I don't want corrugated metal.
Right.
All right. But I have no problem with seam metal for a roof or even for a siding if it's done well. Architectural metal can also be metal panels. With metal panels, there are thickness requirements because if you put a metal panel up, sometimes the term is, I guess, oil can. Like, you know, if you have like an aluminum can and you squish it like your Coke can, that can happen to your architectural metal panels if they're not thick enough.
That makes sense.
So we do need some of those quality requirements, just sort of like vinyl siding. You can have the expensive vinyl siding that is, you know, fire rated and all that other stuff, or you can have the stuff that's damaged by hail or a baseball. You look concerned, Dennis.
Yes, I hear you. I agree with you. I just don't know how you can write that in.
Yeah, and we can try.
You know, because to detail all that, all the. Yeah, I get it. I understand that because we've
done it before.
Exactly. We've walked through it. We've walked about, you know, asked about the quality of the materials. If we saw it, like, okay, which is this? You know, because we've never defined it to say, oh, it needs to be this, needs to be this thick, needs to be like this, you know, then you'd be writing lots of details, and I'm not opposed to that. But, you know.
I do know, I think when we did the Route 23 overlay, we did try to define some of the quality of some of the materials.
Yeah, just simply because this was gonna be a done deal if you walked in.
Yeah.
You walked in and was in there, it was architectural metal, and yeah, it meets the code, and
Yeah, but
it's
you didn't want
corrugated wood.
you're like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So maybe they could take a look at that, or y'all.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent suggestion. So I think what I'm. Sure.
To the township should be compatible.
Agreed.
Complementary.
Yeah, so I think we have some homework to do. And Christine, if you want to send me any more thoughts on this area as well, you can. But we can put our heads together with ZoneCo and kind of do some research on our own as well to kind of clean up some of these definitions, because I agree they are a little vague. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, looking for, because I still do this document, as you say, for the future, you know, that for the next 100 years, 50 years, to clean up 23 from the mistakes and things that has been made to where this is going to look far different in the next 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I want this document to
Agreed.
do.
Yes, and I'm not
Long
saying,
after my lifetime, I want it to be better.
and I'm not saying we should do it like Dublin or New Albany was doing, because like I agree with the signage
Huge
and
mistake.
But just the consistency.
and in like New Albany, everything has to be red brick with like, you know, stone and all this other stuff. I think we want a little more variety and a little more expression.
Well, yeah, focus on
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And then also if there's any grades, so we
Sure,
can know if
yeah.
there's grades.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to move on to next topic?
Let's dance.
All right, so Article 5, landscaping. Scroll down here. So 5.01 is kind of standard boilerplate. When does this apply? 5.02 talks about what's required in a landscaping plan. 5.03 kind of encourages native plants to be planted. There's also a variety requirement that no more than 25% of landscaping on a property shall be composed of any single one plant genus. So 5.04 will be new. So this is street tree requirements. We do have a similar provision in the overlay currently, so that was kind of the inspiration for this. So in almost every zone, except for parks and open space and then the rural residential, we call them street trees. They're not technically because they are outside of the right of way. That is the preference of our operations department, that essentially we just don't have the manpower to maintain trees inside the right of way, but we will encourage them to be planted alongside the street. as essentially every 30 feet.
So do we want to encourage the planting of non-invasive species, or do we want to require it? Require it.
So we do have, so native species are encouraged, invasive species shall not be used.
Okay.
And so we, I think we did, I think there is a definition for that where we refer to the ODNR
Okay.
list of what
Yeah,
is
as long as you
classified
refer
as
to
invasive. Yeah,
We don't want invasive.
right.
We want to encourage the use of native plants
Yeah,
as opposed to non-invasive species.
that is the language we have. It is, so 5.03A.
This has just gotten into detail.
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking under the first one of,
Yeah, where's the language you said that is there? It's not in this.
So page 202, section 5.03A.
yeah. So we have to go down a couple pages.
Can you scroll down I'm dependent up on the screen.
Yeah, so it's 202, Eric. You need to go down 2 pages. There it is.
Okay, yeah, native.
Yeah, native species.
And all of this is a big improvement.
Yes, we have almost no current landscaping
Exactly.
requirements.
Landscaping and
Yeah.
that was it.
To encourage, this is for you and your sustainability and environmental stuff.
Okay.
We want to encourage drought-resistant species to reduce water usage.
I'm open to that.
I'm just asking, it's required in some areas, but not necessarily.
We should encourage it.
I mean, I don't think it should be required.
Not required, but we should encourage
I think we could encourage it. Xeriscaping is a popular thing to try to, I don't think we here in Ohio have drought issues like there are in other areas of the country, where, there's water restrictions and you can't water your yard. We're not there yet. But we could require, like I said, drought-resistant species, which would require less, or encourage, yes, thank you, encourage and require.
Yeah, we can certainly add that. That was not something that I had thought of. So thank you for that.
That's why I have a landscape architect on some of the projects we're working on, because some places it's required, or for some types of government projects or stuff like that.
Does Orange Township have an official plan?
No, we do not. And I don't think we're not going to get that specific.
That would be pretty cool.
It would. We just,
Official plan.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. What is that leaf right there made of? We gotta.
I assume it's an orange leaf. I don't know.
Yeah.
Only during the fall, though.
Yeah. All right. So next is section 5.05, perimeter landscaping requirements. So this is going to be new. I think generally it's something that is a general practice that's already established, but this will kind of codify it. So Eric, if you can go down to the next page, so page 206, there's a graphic there, which is, yeah, that one, which is pretty useful. So essentially what section 5.05 is that it requires planting or landscaping around a building. when it's constructed. And so how deep that landscaping depth has to be depends on the district. So in the industrial district, it's 10 feet. And in most others, it's 5 feet or 3 feet for the side yard.
Do homeowner associations adopt, I hear this, a rural or a suburb house, do the homeowner associations adopt those standards, or would they? With respect to
So
landscape?
this really wouldn't apply to existing neighborhoods. So when this comes into play is when new houses are constructed. There might be a rare case where a new house would be constructed in an existing neighborhood, but for the most part, this would apply to new builds where HOAs would be being created with
And then
knowledge
they
of
would have
this
to
already.
enforce this.
Does anybody currently know, you guys live in, I don't have an HOA.
Okay.
Do the HOAs have any landscaping requirements?
Yes, some do. Some say what you can and cannot put like in your front yard, like you can't have a garden, like a produce garden in the front yard. Some say that you have to have like at least one tree in your front yard, or you have to have like two trees in your front yard, or a tree in your front yard and a tree in your backyard. So, I mean, it's not perhaps, but yes.
Yeah, I was actually reading our homeowners association newsletter today, and there was a note in there about, if you want to plant certain things in your yard and that sort of thing, you need to go through the process of their approval of that wolf ticket. So,
Eric, can you scroll back up, please, to the previous page, just so you all can see. So this chart that's depending on the zoning district, that's how many feet deep the planting area needs to be. So it's mostly 5 feet in the front yard, 3 feet in the side, but then it bumps up for the industrial district and then the overlay district.
and Evans Farm, I presume, is already at that standard anyhow, is that correct?
Yes,
It's
yeah.
34.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything we want to discuss with the?
I don't know where it is in the code, but I know we've talked about it in the past where you have parking lots with the islands.
Yes.
And you know how we don't want them to be just gravel or mulch or sand,
All right.
or
Put-
dead grass.
Yeah. Put a pin in that one. We'll get to that
Okay.
In a bit.
Okay, so that's under parking lots and not
Yeah,
under
correct.
landscaping.
Yeah.
Okay. In my mind, it sort of overlaps.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. It could kind of be in either section.
Dennis, do you have any?
Okay, well, I think that'd be hard to, impossible to enforce.
What?
For those islands on the commercial properties that you say, oh, we need this plant, we need this. And never be enforced.
Well,
I can't think of an example right now.
I think
of
it could
one.
be easily more readily enforced than perhaps the residential ones. The residential
forget
ones
that.
would have to be enforced by the HOA.
Forget that, that's why I was asking. Forget that residential could not be enforced except that initial bill.
Yeah,
And that would have to be approved when you write off.
Right.
exactly.
That's the
And,
only time.
and plants die.
Exactly, that was the only time you'd see it. That's fine, that's fine. And right, that's why I was asking whether the HOAs even took up any of that stuff.
And yeah, so,
And they do to some extent, the same way, yeah, well, that's all right, oh, when we get there.
yeah. Les, do you have any other?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
let's move along.
Okay. So let's move on to the next section. So 5.06 is buffer yards. So this is similar. We're still talking about landscaping, but this gets a little complicated. But essentially what we're talking about is buffering between zoning districts. So particularly when commercial butts up against residential, we have increased buffer yards. And so these two tables, and Eric, if you can scroll down to try to
Type
get
A
both
and
of
type
them.
B.
So essentially, we have two types. So A is the less intense, and then B is the more intense. So essentially, along, I guess I can just read it. Buffer yards are required to be constructed and/or planted between certain adjacent zones, districts, and overlays per this table. Properties that are separated by a public right-of-way are considered adjacent for the purposes of this section. And there we are.
So,
Can I, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask, is there like so you're saying this is between where the boundary line
Correct.
of the
Yeah.
district comes into play?
Yeah.
But is this on both sides of the boundary line, or is it just?
So it depends, and usually yes. So the column on the left there is the district of proposed development. So we'll say flex employment. So that's the industrial. So if a flex employment zone butts up against, we'll say, the neighborhood zone, so that's industrial against residential, which doesn't happen that often, but it could, then they would need the buffer yard type A, so they need 10 feet on their side when they build their, their development.
So that means there'd only be a 20-foot overall buffer.
Right, so, but it wouldn't affect the neighboring property and neighboring zone. They wouldn't have to do a buffer at the same time, but if they redeveloped, then they would.
So theoretically, or just so I can make sure I understand, if somebody's coming to build up against a district, then their side has to follow whatever
Correct.
the script
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily impact the other side.
Correct.
But if they're building at the same time,
Then they would both have.
then they both will have to. Okay, that's all
All
right.
right.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple thoughts. First of all, and this is just me, I don't like having to flip back and forth and read what the little abbreviations are. So if you could just spell out that RR is
Yeah.
residential like you did in table 5.05A, that would make life a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I probably would have concerns, like if I was the flex employment zone or the industrial zone and I was up against a neighborhood or a residential zone, I think I want more than 10 feet of buffer.
Don't we have 100-foot setbacks for all that?
Right, and so this is separate from setbacks.
So this is, you already have the 100-foot setback. Within that 100-foot setback, you're asking for a 10-foot buffer zone, but yet you're having a 20-foot buffer zone between commercial corridor and, pretty much everything. So.
Yeah, and I think, we can look at that. I think this table could use some,
Tweaking.
yes.
So, I mean, this is just me. In my mind, I would like the larger buffers between a neighborhood or a residential zone and a commercial zone or some of these other more higher intensity of
Sure,
use
yeah.
zones. Whereas, between rural residential and when you don't have rural residential next to neighborhood, but yeah.
Yeah, and so the one thing I will point out, so the neighborhood zone is never required to build the buffer.
Mm-hmm.
It's only for the commercial zones.
Okay.
So yeah, I agree this table could use a little tweaking, but are we on board with the general concept of it?
For the concept, but
Yeah.
Township, the business that closes at 5 p.m., doesn't have any traffic and doesn't have any lights, no big deal. Then we have a Home Depot that's right next to a neighborhood, okay, That's
That's a big deal.
And yeah, those are two completely separate issues because of the type of business that it is. So yeah, I think writing something general is as good as you can get, and things like that just have to be dealt with, when you talk about it.
And so, but I think it's one of those things that as much as we might like to do things on a case-by-case basis, we need standards.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how you could write those in, of the vast differences between those two businesses. I mean, they're night and day.
I mean, well, maybe we just have the standard and then, if there's an issue, we can always modify it, but I would rather have the standard to make sure that, like, if a Home Depot goes next to a neighborhood, that they have that 20-foot buffer of
They were
plants.
forced to build a big hill.
Yeah,
There's no 20-foot buffer. That buffer, I don't know how big it is, and it's a tall hill because this is a business that has lights on their parking lot the whole time.
Yeah.
Again, this.
and then they have a fence or a wall.
Yeah,
Different thing.
and so actually this segues right into the next section. If we want to just scroll down to that, 5.07 is screening standards.
Okay.
Which is all.
And so we do have screening standards and then permitted screening types depending on the zone. So you have the option of fence, walls, berm, and then trees and shrubs. So these are required around trailers, non-vehicular equipment, tools and machinery, loading docks, containers, consumer goods, packaged wholesale merchandise, and trash containers, dumpsters.
Okay.
And do the trees and shrubs have a maximum distance between the two to make sure that it's totally closed and can't be seen, or is it just general? Put them big, hide behind it.
I don't know that we have one, and we do have similar language in, I think, other sections, so we might want to look at pulling those. And that's a good point.
Because I would suggest, like you said, and what's the term, opacity for the
Yeah.
fence or something?
Yeah.
Because you could
Yeah.
have a chain link fence.
Sure.
That you could see right through. You could have the little plastic slats, which I really don't like. Or you could have a wood fence or a vinyl fence or, a variety of fences. So I would, and then when you're talking about tools and machinery and non-vehicular equipment, are you referring to like rooftop units or transformers, like large transformers, that sites might have?
I believe that is
Okay.
the goal of that, yeah.
Might want a definition for that.
Clarify it, sure.
Because I'm not concerned about like the small little air conditioning unit
Right.
in somebody's house, but I'm concerned about a rooftop unit that might be mounted on the ground, or like industrial blowers or industrial sized transformers. You look concerned, Dennis.
Well, I'm thinking even the big boxes that we have, those didn't really, well, of course, those were allowed done a lot earlier than this, but, well, that sounds like an industrial project where you just go with the
Yeah.
transformers and stuff.
Yeah, I did have one, and the zoning required that it be
Yeah.
screened both for vision
Yeah.
and for sound. Because some of
that's
that,
good.
you're looking at.
Yeah, also good luck with that.
What was that?
Good luck with that.
Oh, no, they have requirements of decibels at the property line.
How did you reduce the sound when you walked in? I mean, I like that idea about sound to some degree.
I had to go on and find a sound attenuation calculator to figure out, basically based on the distance that you go, there's a certain amount of decibel rating that goes down. But it was double screened, so it was like an industrial blower that came in a packaged screening, and then we provided an additional screening around it in terms of it to reduce the sound, in terms of and it was just like your standard vinyl fence. It didn't really, but it did come with its own packaging because it was an industrial blower.
The only issues we've really had have been the car washes. Thinking about, okay, here's the sound, or fast foods.
Exactly.
And the smell, and think about things we've had have been.
Well, I was thinking about
and-
that data center that was gonna come and all the people who complained about the sound because of the heavy duty. You know what I'm talking
That
about.
would have been the largest piece of industrial thing we would have had.
So I do want to clarify some things.
You were involved with that, right?
No, I heard about it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So underneath this table, Eric, if you can scroll down to the next page. So this does kind of clarify some rules. It doesn't specify about spacing with landscaping necessarily, but such screening shall effectively block views of required screening areas between grade level and a minimum of 6 feet in height above grade level. All such screening shall be properly maintained in an orderly fashion and be a minimum of 6 feet in height and no taller than 12 feet in height, which does not apply to trees. And then it does specify screening of mechanical and service equipment. All equipment for heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and similar devices shall be screened from direct view from a non-alley public right-of-way by a building or by landscaping and/or screening that meets the provisions of this section. So we do have the mechanicals.
Mechanicals, yeah.
Anything else we want to talk about with screening?
I'm assuming it's in the parking lot where we've talked about parking lot screening
Yep.
for headlights?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, so the last section in the landscaping article, 5.08. So this does give us some language to kind of enforce things, especially in, so A and B. So the property owner shall be responsible for the continued proper maintenance of all landscaping materials and shall keep them in a proper, neat, and orderly appearance, free from refuse and debris at all times. And then B, unhealthy or dead landscaping requirements are to be replaced. Plants that are required as part of this article and that become unhealthy or that die must be replaced by the earliest of either 1 calendar year from their death or by the next planting season. So we do have some enforcement tools there to tackle that. Currently, we have language similar to this in the overlay district, but not in most of our zoning districts.
So,
Who determines the tree death?
you can get a certified arborist if you're
Yeah,
concerned about it.
that would
I had a
ultimately.
tree that I thought died, and they told me it was dead, and it turns out it was one of the best fir trees that came back. I mean, everything suggested it was dead, but I gave it a little fertilizer and
I'm going back a little bit and apologize for this, but thinking about those commercial buildings again and that, have the sloped roofs gone away?
the what?
The what?
Sloped roofs
Requirement,
Oh, yes,
requirement, those are gone.
yes.
so we
Okay,
can have a flat roof with a parapet.
Because it wasn't even on there, sloped roof was gone, well, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So now you can put all the hardware up on your roof and,
And you can screen your rooftop mechanicals so you don't have to mount
Yeah.
them on the ground.
all right, all good, that's nice.
Sorry. Before we move on, I hate to say it, if you scroll up, the potential layout of a dumpster screening. The only issue I have with that, I understand what you're trying to get at. You're trying to get pedestrian access without opening the gate. I'm assuming this diagram's from Zoneco?
It is.
Okay. So, how should I put it? If it's, you're trying to get pedestrian access, and technically if it is a dumpster for, let's say, an apartment complex, it needs a handicap accessible ramp. Yeah,
Where you can park.
or whatever, yeah, unless
Do
they.
they require that now?
Yeah, unless you have some sort of alternative way of collecting trash, yes. your trash dumpster has to be handicapped accessible. So if you have like one of those large breezeways, like the Schottenstein's development or something like that, and you need to have like handicapped accessibility, or you can be able to call them and they will pick up the stuff from like your apartment or something like that. So I would perhaps suggest they select a different image that shows pedestrian access via a ramp. And usually we have to like design it so the ramp goes up to the side of the dumpster and there's an opening in the enclosure so you can put stuff in. This would not perhaps apply to commercial, so this is fine for commercial perhaps. Most people I know who have commercial dumpsters, they just make the guy with the grease trolley, because you probably will also have a grease trolley there for the grease.
Right.
They just make them open it up and close it.
So it's an apartment
Yeah,
dumpster needs to have ADA.
yeah, unless they provide specialized trash pickup. I just bring that up, sorry.
No, I'm not surprised. I'm sure anybody that comes in here with those projects already knows that.
Yes, they already know that.
They already know what
They already said that, but I don't want them being like, oh, dumpster screening. And then complain that your dumpster screening requirements don't work. So I'll just throw that out there.
All right.
We can
Anything
move
else?
on now, right? Thank you.
Anything else we want to talk about in section 5? Or Article 5, rather. So there's really 2 more sections that I want to get through with you all, which is parking and then signage. It is nearing 8 o'clock. Do you guys want to keep going? Do you want to put a pin in this and come back at a later date?
We put a pin in it, but
Okay, I was gonna say maybe do parking and what was the other one?
Signage.
Signage,
Well,
maybe.
signage would be simple, come on.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, whatever it is, it's all good. I was gonna say, I would postpone signage to a later.
I think signage will
how
probably,
much you got on parking?
Yeah.
it's fairly substantial.
Yeah, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of a big, wide variety
Yeah.
of things to talk about with respect to
Yeah.
parking and what's the kind of standards you want to, and what decides those standards, the size of the building, the amount of.
Yes, or how much buffer you
How much
want
you
for
can-
your
yeah,
parking,
you know,
and screening the headlights or headlights and, buffers on islands, and how often you need an island.
Yeah. Pin. Say we need the pin store.
Is that the general consensus?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was willing to go to like 8:30, but I don't know if we'll be able to finish parking.
Yeah, I don't know that we
Everybody
will.
else wants to.
All right, so in terms of next steps, tomorrow, I mentioned, but I'll mention again, we are having kind of a presentation of this draft code to the public. So I'm doing a presentation here tomorrow night at 5:30. If you all want to attend, you're welcome to. This is going to be the very simplified version. It won't be new territory for any of you, so I don't know that you don't need to come, but you're welcome to.
How long do you think your presentation will take?
Probably about an hour, and then maybe half an hour for questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
It starts at
5:30.
Yeah.
good for you, Robert, thanks for putting that together.
Yeah, and obviously, some things are going to change by the time we get around to the final draft. But we just today posted it on our website, so we're kind of rolling it out for wider consumption at this point.
Did you also send it to the email listserv or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah. So that is tomorrow. So I mentioned in my email yesterday, so we did get a new rezoning in, which will be, the date for that will be April 9th. So we'll have an actual hearing. So we'll get that out to you, both digital and hard copy, later this week or next week. So expect a meeting on April 9th. And then I think we should meet, again on the draft code, either April 16th or April 23rd. April 16th or April 23rd, and we don't have to decide right now. I can send out an email and we can
Those days on
coordinate.
Tuesday, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say my preference would be the 16th, but we can make the 23rd work because we do want to get the ball rolling on this code. So. But we can coordinate that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead. 16.
Yeah, and I think I'm okay with the 16th, the day after tax day, but
Yeah.
Should be fine.
Is there any other business that we need to attend to?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Then, if everyone is good with it, I will officially close this zoning meeting for the discussion of our draft zoning resolution to be continued at a later date. Yeah.